Hello everybody, welcome back to the Jerfish apiary, and unfortunately we have some bad news. Hive 2 has unfortunately died. They had a dead out. I suspect it was because of moisture issues. I'm looking into other possibilities, but there's definitely moisture problems in that hive. I've reached out to Dr. Leo, who I got my Layens hives from and who's kind of the guru on these kinds of things, and he gave me a number of recommendations and tips that I'm going to include in here for everyone to know for your own use in the future if you have these kind of hives. Now, it's kind of unfortunate because they made it through most of the winter, and I think they just gradually got more and more wet from condensation buildup, and wet bees kind of die in the winter because of the cold, and it's just not good for them to be wet in the first place as the convection of air goes up and it's hot air and it rises, but then it can't hold the moisture as it cools off and it gets to the top, drops down on the bees and everywhere, and you can have mold issues and a whole bunch of other problems. As the outside part of the cluster gradually dies off like rings of an onion, the inside gets smaller and smaller. You have less and less bees until the point where they can no longer heat the hive. And I think that's what happened here. I did take a number of pictures when I first saw it. I was not recording at the time. And I was kind of surprised by the moment because everything was alive here just a week ago. If you look here, there are a number of dead bees on the bottom of the hive, which is indicative of, well, just they were gradually dying off. And the bees are the whole length of the hive, so I think as the cluster was moving forward, they kept dropping off throughout all of winter. The ones where there was standing water at the far end of the hive away from the entrance do have mold on them, so they've been there for quite some time. The ones in the front of the hive do not. They are more recent die-offs. Here you can see the queen overlying the final brood cluster that they were trying to desperately cling to keep warm so that they could try to repopulate, but alas, it was for naught. And the bees themselves actually look okay. They don't look like they have any K-wings from a viral thing, and I don't see a lot of issues or a lot of things pointing towards nosema or viral dysentery or anything like that. Another thing I am not seeing are mites, so this was not a mite die-off or anything like that. So what could have been done differently? Well, Dr. Leo recommends that if you're going to put wool above your hives, to make sure that it is 100% wool. I guess they even sometimes use a wool stuffed pillow. That way it doesn't cover completely. And don't let the blanket go the whole way to the bottom of the hive in the area after the follower board. The way I had the blanket, it was bunched up in there. It may have been a partial synthetic blend. It is a fire blanket, and it went the whole way to the bottom. And so it just didn't let enough air circulate and that let water build up. Bees will generate up to 3 gallons of water through their respiratory efforts to keep the hive warm while they consume honey over the course of winter, and it needs to get out, and unfortunately it just couldn't. He also recommends having a 3/4 inch gap underneath your follower board. Although bees may be able to get in and out of there, I guess it really won't build outside of there too much, or it shouldn't be too much of a problem. The only time to keep it completely closed off, he said, was after you install a package or install a new swarm. But otherwise, after things are established, and especially for winter, to have a 3/4 inch gap at the bottom of your follower board. So I'm going to put a piece of wood underneath my follower board on the surviving hive in order to create better ventilation now. Another interesting thing he said was not to leave too many extra honey stores over the course of the winter. I don't know how much of an impact that has, but it's something he mentioned. I had plenty of honey stores in hive 2. They certainly didn't use it all. Maybe that's a factor in it also, but I also didn't want to starve them out. So it's that balancing act, I suppose, when you're creating artificial areas for bees. Something mentioned in Keeping Bees with a Smile, which is a book for horizontal hives, originally from Russia, is there are, I believe there's silica or some other color gel packs that can be put on as a frame after the follower board on both ends of your hive pack. And that also can be something to absorb up to 1.5 gallons or more of water throughout the course of the winter, and then in the summer, after everything is situated and you no longer have the convection air issues of the heating and cooling from the cool air outside, you can take those out, set them in the sun, let them dry out, use them again next year. It is a beautiful day, especially for April 10th in upstate New York. I'm going to take a quick peek at Hive 1 and just make sure they don't have any water issues, and also up that follower board. I don't want to get too much into disrupting everything, and while I'm in there, I'll just make sure that they don't need any extra frames, because we're having an early season this year because it's so unseasonably warm right now. It is going to cool off again next week with lows into the 30s, so I don't want to do too much disruption to them. But it'll be good at least to get an idea of how things are in there and if they need anything, or if they need extra frames even. I don't want them to run out of space and decide to swarm. If they swarm, they swarm. I'm not gonna try to do splits and do those kind of things. I'm not ready for that. I have a swarm trap, maybe they'll go to it. One thing I wanna point out is you have to persevere through these kind of things when it comes to beekeeping. If Hive 1 taught me anything last year, you have to rebuild and keep going. They rebuilt after a bear destroyed their queen and almost all of their hive and brood and everything. And they're the ones that are still alive right now. So you just gotta pick yourself back up, rebuild, keep going. It's the life lessons of bees. And I myself am gonna learn, educate myself more, and do more with it. And if you look there, there's some cement blocks and some other things. I wonder what could be going on. Maybe a third hive, maybe some chickens.